Welcome to Getting Unstuck with Wendy B. I'm still exploring about lighting, and I'm trying all sorts of new things. So thank you for your patience and welcome. And we are going to go back to conflict. What keeps us in conflict? I had some response, and I wanted to answer some of those questions that were asked. And so I will continue this discussion, and I'll introduce myself first. I'm Wendy Bergen. I am a transformational solution coach, and what that means is I coach people on what would be the conflict question is great because it's like, what would be a predictable result if you keep doing what you're doing, and what transformational is in that what was not going to be, hi Stuart, what was not going to be predictable is going to happen out of my coaching. I'm an expert at that. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your thumbs up. And so I'm also an international speaker. I'm a podcaster. I have a podcast, Thriving at 60. I'm in over 30 different countries, and I have over 26,000 followers. And I've just written a best-selling book, Getting Unstuck, 30 Ways to Turn Your Limiting Barriers into Clarity, Freedom, and Power. And you can buy that on Amazon in paperback or digital. And then you can also buy it on digital on Tolino, Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Overdrive, and 24 Symbols. So that's what, hi Stuart. So this is great. So the question that I was asked last week, and it was so great because I love it when people leave questions, is this one person said there's two types of conflicts for her. And one is with the past, because I considered that I made a bad decision which affects who I am today, or I didn't take any action back then. And conflict at work for her is when I know that what I say is correct, and I try strongly to present the view, which can end in conflict. I also know this is a bit childish, so I'm glad you saw that. Is there a technique to deal with these conflicts so that you can move forward and don't look back all the time to compare? So that's great questions. Thank you for those questions. Those are two separate conflicts. And, I'll just briefly say that if we don't compare the past, it's not that. If we don't complete the past, we will always bring the future we'll bring the past into our future. If we don't complete the past, we'll keep bringing it into our future. And there'll be a predictable result from that. There's, because that's what we do as humans. Most of the time, we don't complete the past, and we bring it into our future. And comparing always brings dissatisfaction. You'll always feel like, hi Diane, you'll always feel like you're never enough if you're always comparing. You'll never measure up. So thanks. And also, when you strongly present a view, it'll probably end up in conflict. And yes, there are practices that you can take on. And what I need to say with that is that practices take practice. And I think the biggest, to be straight here, the biggest thing that keeps conflict alive is when we have a point of view and we don't give room for other people to have point of views, and we come from, I'm right and you're wrong. Yes, Stuart, it is, comparison is the thief of joy. But like when we have to be right we can get pretty righteous. And the hardest thing I say when there's conflict is being willing to give up being right and come from workability. What's going to work here? What can we do to have workability? And sometimes we have to compromise. And I think the hardest practice is when we are right to give up being right. And I think when we're discussing rather than accusing, because we can accuse rather than discuss, we need to watch our tone, because our tone can cause conflict. We can be right all we want. You know, I notice it with my children sometimes. It's like, oh my God, how did they do that? Don't they know there's no workability? It's how I deal with it is what keeps the conflict going. If I'm not willing to give up being right and come from workability, the conflict will constantly be there. So I just wrote a few things down around conflict. It's important to keep your voice low. When emotions run high, when we're quite righteous, because we know we're right, intelligence goes out the window. And and I can get into upset sometimes right away. I was upset. Is it possible for more than one person to be right? Yeah, you both could be right. If there's, and then you need to compromise. You need to, you have a right to your view. They have a right to their view. And then you need to look at what your intention is over whatever subject you're dealing with. You need to stop for a moment and, and discuss, not accuse, use a low tone. And before you discuss you need to look at, well, what's your intention in this conversation? There's a conflict. What's your intention? And each speak your intention. Because is your intention to be right and they're wrong? Then you might as well stop the conversation, because it's not going to go anywhere, right? And you need to end it. Like, hey, we're both being right here. It's not going to work. We need a timeout. We need to look at what are we really wanting to resolve here. But if the intention is to resolve the conflict, and if you both can give up being right and come from what's workable here, what can we work out so there's workability on both sides, there's a win-win on both sides. Look at what can we agree on? What can't we agree on? What's working, what's not working in the situation? And then, I just jotted some notes here. Are we willing to really listen to each other? Because sometimes we say we are, but we're not. We're listening to get we're listening so we can interrupt it, or we're listening till it's our turn, and then, but we haven't listened really to what the person's saying. We're usually listening for what we can say, rather than listening for, oh, I'm in their shoes. If I was in their shoes, I might have the same perception, right? So, do you need a timeout? Are the emotions so high that you need a timeout to go get some coaching? Both of you go separate and get coaching with an agreement that you'll get back at a certain time and rediscuss it. And if you can't resolve, can you bring in a mediator? It depends on what you're discussing, right? And I had a conflict just recently, and some people owe me quite a bit of money, and they're friends, or have been, and it's caused great conflict in my life. It's been almost 4 years, and I finally hired a lawyer to send them a letter. I was just like, it was like, oh, like, because every time I had a discussion with them, they could never tell me when they would pay me, and it's quite in the thousands. It's quite a large amount of money. And so I sent a letter, and they called me to yesterday, and how dare I send this letter? And they kept telling me I should have some compassion and whatnot. And so I listened to them, and I said, yeah, I don't get, you get the impact on me that you haven't kept your word. You're not in communication. The only communication we have is when I'm in communication. I have to hunt you down, and I'm confronted, and I didn't see any other way. And so finally they started negotiating, and we've come up with an agreement, and I want it in writing. I'm willing to negotiate. They openly said, yeah, what they had done wasn't workable, had no workability. I've had to compromise, and I could stay being right and take it to court, or I could work it out. One isn't better than the other. It's just whatever you can work with. So where I'm clear is that the 4 years hasn't worked for me, and their agreement is to pay me a couple of grand every month until the debt is paid. And what I need to make clear with them is that if they renege on any of those payments, I will take it to court. But what was neat in sharing this is that I was right and they were right? They were upset that how dare you, sent a lawyer after us, and I actually had a right to do that, after 4 years of no movement. And I was willing to negotiate and compromise. And yes, I would like it in one lump sum. It would be real helpful, but right now they're saying they can't do that. So it's like, okay, compromise. And if they're consistent in their payments, I'll consider it getting paid in full when they pay it in full. And if they're not, then I'll have to take another step. So that's a conflict resolution that I was willing to compromise. I could have stayed, no, I'm taking it to court, and had, a lot of expense and kerfuffle, or have it resolved. And right now it looks like I'm compromising, and they're willing to take action right now. So I'm really grateful. And maybe next week I'll talk about the conflict from the past, from making decisions from the past, because that's a separate conversation. But hopefully I gave you some value that keep, if there's, if you want to get your point across, keep looking at, are you being right, or are you bringing workability? And keep your voice low, because when emotions run high, our intelligence goes out the window. Ask, can we stop for a moment, so you can, breathe and look at what your intention is. Discuss, not accuse. Before you discuss, what is your intention? And get really clear what your intention is, because maybe the other party is so angry that they still have to be right. That's okay. Just time out now. We can't discuss it right now. We're not going to resolve anything until both of our intentions are to resolve the conflict. And then we need to come from, rather than being right, I'm right, you're wrong, we need to come from what's workable in this situation, and what can we agree on? What can we not agree on? And are we coming from facts only, or are we coming from emotions? Because I don't know about you, but I'm a natural redhead. I could come from emotions, right? Are you willing to use yeah, okay, Val. Are we willing to use a timer? Sometimes, like, just to listen to each other, you know, and okay, you talk for 5 minutes, I'll listen, and really, really listen. Try to get into their world and see why they're taking the actions they're taking. And, you know, do you need to go for some coaching? Both of you need to go for some coaching so that you can get back together. You know, can you resolve it with a mediator if you can't do it yourselves? So thanks for listening. I'm thrilled that you're on. And again, just mentioning my best-selling book, Getting Unstuck, 30 Ways to Turn Your Limiting Barriers into Clarity, Freedom, and Power. It's available on Amazon. The paperback is available on Amazon, and so is the digital copy. And the digital copy is also available on Tolino, Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Overdrive, and 24 Symbols. And if you want, you know, send me some messages, what you want to hear the topics on. I love it. I love that participation. Don't forget that you get a 15-minute complimentary discovery session where if you're dealing with something and you're challenged, I promise you that if you take the coaching, you will move forward. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again at 12 noon next week on Getting Unstuck with Wendy B. Don't forget to like my page, not just like my post, but actually like my page. And see you next week at 12 noon. Thanks. Bye now.